All right, let's dive into one of the most surprisingly rebellious novels ever written, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. Now, if you're picturing some quiet, meek Victorian lady, you can just throw that idea out the window. This is the story of a young woman's fight for herself, told in her own firing words. And it really all boils down to one huge question. Seriously, think about it. What does it actually mean to be true to yourself when it feels like the whole world is telling you to be someone else? This is the core of Jane's entire life. She's living in a society with these super strict rules, rules for women, rules for the poor, rules for anyone who doesn't fit in the box. And guess what? Jane checks all three of those boxes. Her story is basically a survival guide for keeping your soul intact when everything is trying to crush it. So, get this. Charlotte Bronte actually published this under a man's name, Kerr Bell, and she laid her cards on the table right from the start. She was not here to write some nice, polite little story. Her whole goal, and this is a direct quote, was to raise the gilding and show base metal under it. I mean, how cool is that? She was basically saying, I'm here to scratch off all the fancy gold paint and show you the ugly, raw truth underneath. She was calling out the hypocrisy of her entire society. Okay, so a rebel with a cause? Jane's origin story. You gotta wonder, where does a character like Jane even come from? Well, her story starts in this really brutal childhood. She's an orphan, she's told she's a burden, basically that she's worthless. But it's that fire, that hardship, that actually forges her spirit into something that just can't be broken. And this is the moment we see that fire for the first time. She's just a kid, only 10 years old. And after being punished for something she didn't do, she doesn't just go to her room and cry. Oh, no. She stands up to her cruel aunt, Mrs. Reed, and tells her exactly what she thinks. This isn't just a kid having a tantrum. It's a full-on declaration of independence. She's demanding to be treated like a human being. So what happens? She gets shipped off to Lowood Institution. It's supposed to be this charity school for orphans, but it's a nightmare. The guy who runs it, Mr. Brocklehurst, is this total hypocrite. He's always preaching about how the girls should be humble and suffer quietly, all while his own family is dripping in luxury. I mean, his daughters are wearing silks and furs, while the students at Lowood are literally freezing and starving. It's just awful. It's at Lowood that Jane meets her first real friend, Helen Burns, and they are total opposites. You have Jane, who sees injustice and just boils with rage. She wants to fight back. Then you have Helen, who's all about enduring hardship quietly and forgiving everyone, believing that she'll get her reward in the afterlife. It really presents Jane with this huge question, right? Do you fight against the world, or do you just bear it? Well, that debate ends in the most tragic way possible. Helen's philosophy of just taking it can't save her from the terrible conditions at the school. She gets sick with consumption and dies, right there in Jane's arms. For Jane, that's it. That's the turning point. She decides she is not going to just endure. She is going to get out and make her own life, a life on her own terms. All right, let's fast forward a bit. Jane grows up, and she finally leaves Lowood to become a governess. And this brings us to the next chapter, The Secret at Thornfield. This is where the story gets really juicy. She ends up at this huge, spooky mansion called Thornfield Hall, and that's where she meets its master, the one and only Mr. Rochester. Now, their relationship is not your typical love story, not at all. He's this dark, brooding, difficult guy, and she's this quiet but incredibly direct governess. They don't flirt, they argue, they challenge each other. In a world where everything is about appearances, these two connect on a purely intellectual level. It's like he's finally found someone who can match his wit, and she's finally found someone who actually sees her for her mind. But Thornfield Hall has secrets, big, scary secrets. Strange things start happening. You've got this creepy, demonic laugh echoing from a locked room. A mysterious fire suddenly starts in Mr. Rochester's bed. A guest gets violently attacked in the middle of the night. And then, the night before Jane's wedding, her veil is torn in half by what looks like a ghost. Rochester keeps blaming this one servant, Grace Poole, but come on, we know something much, much darker is at play here. So, passion versus principle. This is the big one. Because despite all the weird, spooky stuff happening, Jane and Rochester fall completely in love. He proposes, and Jane feels like she's finally found everything she's ever wanted: a home, a family, an equal. But that secret?
It's about to blow up in the most spectacular way, and it's going to force Jane to make an absolutely impossible choice. They're literally at the altar, about to say I do, when bam, someone objects. The secret is out. Mr. Rochester is already married. And that creepy laugh, the mysterious figure, it's his wife, Bertha Mason, who he has kept locked away in the attic this whole time. So Rochester begs her. He says, forget society, forget the rules, just run away with me to France. Be my mistress. He's offering her passion, love, a life of luxury. But for Jane, to accept that means giving up the one thing she has fought for her entire life, her self-respect. She would be his possession, not his equal. And so, in this heart-wrenching moment, she chooses her principles over her passion. She leaves. And that leads us to the next phase, forging her own fortune. Jane runs away with literally nothing. She's heartbroken, she's destitute. This is her absolute lowest point. But what's amazing is that this is also where she discovers that she can not only survive on her own, but she can actually build a life for herself. So, after days of wandering and starving, she collapses and is taken in by the Rivers family. And then, in a twist you just don't see coming, it turns out they're not strangers at all. They're her cousins, the family she has been searching for her entire life. Suddenly, she belongs somewhere. But wait, it gets even crazier. They also tell her that an uncle she never knew has passed away and left her his entire fortune. We're talking 20,000 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's like being a multi-millionaire today. Overnight, Jane goes from being a nobody with nothing to one of the most powerful people she knows, an independently wealthy woman. That was almost unheard of back then. So what does she do with all this money and power? This is what makes Jane so incredible. Instead of keeping it all for herself, the very first thing she does is split it into 4 equal shares. One for her and one for each of her cousins. Think about that. She doesn't use the money to put herself above everyone else. She uses it to build a true family of equals. Okay, so this next section is about a radical return. Jane has it all now, right? She's got family, she's got a fortune, she's completely independent. She should be happy. But something's missing. Her story isn't quite finished yet because a piece of her heart is still somewhere else. Her cousin, St. John, who is, by the way, very cold and controlling, proposes marriage. Not out of love, but because he thinks she'd be a good missionary's wife. And she almost says yes, but right at that moment, she hears something, a voice on the wind, calling her name. Jane, Jane, Jane! It's Rochester, and somehow she knows he's in trouble. She follows that voice all the way back to Thornfield, and when she gets there, it's just a ruin, a burnt-out shell of a house. She finds out what happened. Bertha set the whole place on fire and then jumped from the roof. The house, the secret, the past, it's all been burned to the ground. But Rochester is alive. Jane finds him, but he's broken. He tried to save everyone from the fire, and in the process, he was blinded and badly injured. The powerful master of the house is now completely dependent. And look at the situation now. She's the one with the money and the power, and he's the one who is vulnerable. The tables have completely turned. And it's only in this moment, when they can truly meet as equals, that their relationship can finally work. So after that whole epic journey, you might be thinking, okay, cool story, but why does a book from the 1800s still matter today? Well, especially if you're trying to figure out your own place in the world, Jane's story is packed with lessons. Let's break down why she's still such a big deal. First off, demand respect, period. Even when she was a little kid with zero power, Jane knew she was worthy of it. Number 2, your value comes from inside you, not from your social status or how much money you have. Third, and this is a big one, independence is everything, financial, emotional, all of it. The only reason Jane could go back to Rochester was because she didn't need him anymore. And maybe most important of all, true love is a partnership of equals. It doesn't ask you to become smaller. Jane's whole life is a testament to this one core idea. Never, ever, ever compromise your principles for anyone. Jane literally broke every rule in the book to be happy and to be herself. So that brings us right back to where we started, but this time the question is for you. In your life, what are the rules? What are the expectations from family, friends, or society that are holding you back? And what are you willing to challenge to be truly 100% yourself?